for it to go live on Facebook and YouTube and everything. And then once it's confirmed, then we can go into the introductions. So I apologize about this. But here we are. Hello, hello, and welcome back to Retrieving Sanity with your podcast host, Keegan. And this is your podcast for all mental health, addiction, recovery issues, and topics. And today we have something super spectacular going on today. We have a questionnaire about Peter Dalk, Kimberly Henry, and myself. So, with anyone that is unfamiliar with what's going on, well, Q&A is where we're really just going to sit here and we're going to ask Ben what it was like to be in the Holocaust, what made him get through it, and what made him who he is now, and just literally anything that can go on with it. And with the amount of people that we have in here, we can go on for whoever knows how long. And if anyone needs to dip out early, please let us know and we can get your questions up first. Um, but without further ado, Benjamin, would you like to introduce yourself? Say hi to everyone.
Yes, of course. Um, it's nice to have a nice group like you. I'm very happy to talk to you guys. I'll tell you, I had a very strange childhood. Um, at the age of 10 and a half, the war broke out and my whole life changed. Um, all the years before the Holocaust, everything, my memory just disappeared. It looks like the Holocaust just wiped out my memory as a child. All I remember is from the day of the Holocaust and very little from before. Um, I went through two Holocausts, the Polish Holocaust, and I ran away from Poland into Hungary. Hungary was a free country, and a few months later, Hungary was occupied and my second Holocaust began. Um, the first Holocaust, I went through a lot. I had a wonderful family. We were a family of seven. My father, mother, brothers. I had two brothers and two sisters. Out of the family of seven, only two of us survived. My my sister Lola and I. We were the only survivors out of the family of seven. The rest of them were all slaughtered by the Nazis.
I'm so sorry, Ben.
What what can I tell you? Um, things started happening very fast once the Nazis came into Poland, to Krakow. They took away my father's businesses. He had a wine and syrup manufacturing, and he also had a chocolate factory. He was the first one to manufacture chocolate covered wafers, something like Kit Kat, only in the shape of little animals, rabbits, bears, and they had tinfoil on it. And every time my father would come home, us kids would search his pockets for some goodies. He always had some in his pockets to make sure he satisfies us. We had a beautiful life before. Um, we actually had you could say, two homes. My mother's side of the family came from Munkacs. Munkacs was in Hungary, and she had a wonderful family there. And every summer, my parents would take us kids to Munkacs, and then we would come back for winter for the school year, go to school in Krakow. But anyway, when the war broke out, my oldest sister Goldie was caught in Munkac, and she couldn't come home anymore, which was good because Munkac was a free country at that time. Um,
Mm-hmm.
all right, so
Hey, Ben.
you remember the war broke out in 1939,
Mm-hmm.
September of 39, and Munkac, Hungary, wasn't occupied till March of 1944.
Mm-hmm.
So it was a free country. But in Krakow, I remember the Jewish people were given an order: you may no longer reside in Krakow. If you wanted to live in Krakow, you had to go into a ghetto. That's the
Mm-hmm.
first time they made a ghetto. I hope you all know what a ghetto is. A very bad place to live. So my whole family, my father's side of the family, which were numbering over 200, all went into the ghetto. And my father was preparing to go into the ghetto when a young man came up to him by the name of Michael Lieber, and he says, Mr. Lesser, you know how I feel about your daughter Lola. I love her, and someday I'd love to marry her. But do me a favor, come to the same communities that my father and I are moving to, called Nepalamitsa. My father gave him a choice to go into Krakow Ghetto or to Nepalamitsa. He chose Nepalamitsa. And we were all leaving to go to Nepalamitsa. Anyway, it's a long story which I'm going to skip a lot, but to tell you that we found out that my father had 1,000 American dollars that he saved up for a rainy day. That was a small fortune in those days. He took the money and pasted it in between pages of a book, and he put it with all the religious books in a sack, and we loaded it on the wagon. About an hour outside of the
Why?
city, we're being stopped. Halt! And two husky Nazis jump on the wagon. The only thing they wanted to know, do we have any Jewish literature books? And they saw two sacks full of books. They picked them up and heaved it on the side of the road. They had a mountain full of books there. Um, they knew that
Hey,
everybody who didn't go into the ghetto had to cross this road. So
hey,
they
Ben.
confiscated all these books, and they were going to have a bonfire after everybody left.
Hey, Ben. Uh, I don't want to interrupt, but I am going to interrupt, and I'm deeply apologizing for that. Um, but for being a Q&A panel, uh, that was a great introduction. Can you answer the first question for me? When were you liberated?
I was liberated in April 29th, 1945.
Okay. Um, so that is an amazing date for you, and this is an amazing date for us. And for everyone out there. My Riverside is kind of messing up, so I don't know if I'm popping in and out. So if that happens, let's see. Eeny, meeny, miny, mo. Kimberly, you were here a little bit earlier. You were the first one in. So can you monitor everything just in case I disappear? Everything should still be going on. Sweet. Thank you. Um, but with that being said, Ben, is it okay if we open up the floor to some questions?
So you want me to continue? Can you hear me, Keegan?
I think he froze a little bit.
Nope, there I'm
There's
back.
back.
I didn't
Okay.
hear your question. What was that?
Did you want me to continue telling my story?
um, with the story aspect, we've got your interview um, online and everything. So our guests have some questions that they've got prepared that they would like to have done themselves. But I would like to do a little bit more of a proper introduction for everyone. So first up, we have Kimberly Henry. She was raised by two alcoholic parents. She has her own podcast now called The Kimberly Show, and she has a book that is actually really cool. She has to explain it a little bit more than I can. Then we also have Tanya Eckenberg, and she is an awesome energy healer. By the way, I need another session. Uh, and a certified self care coach dedicated to helping individuals release emotional baggage. And her mission is to show that healing is possible through dedication, self care, and energy alignment. Then we have Jan Lauren Greenfield, award winning screenwriter, podcast producer, and creative strategist known for blending emotional depth with humor. And more on that. But then we have Crystal Robinson, who I've interviewed before, and she is a holistic healer. Went from an engineer to now an recovery engineer. Sorry about that. And then we also have Pete, who is a podcast host as well with his Pete versus anxiety. Sorry about that, Pete. And he's got a ton of awesome guests on his show, and it is up on the rise, and it's on the Oracle Radio Network, if I'm not mistaken. And it is something y'all need to check out, especially on TikTok. Catch him live there. And then we also have Hillary Russo, who is a trauma informed holistic mental health practitioner and journalist. And she also has something interesting for us as well. And then we also have Simba, who is the co-host of Retrieving Sanity, and he is off on his own journey at the moment, and he is always just one of the keystones of retrieving sanity. So, with that being said, everyone is introduced a little bit ramshambuckily. Um, so, with that, I'm going to introduce Kimberly. Would you like to go ahead and ask your first question?
Sure. It's not about particularly the Holocaust at the moment. I'm curious. I'm a big reader and I love books, particularly about the Holocaust. I have a personal story about the Holocaust. My grandfather served for the United States delivering ammunition. Came home, I discovered as a teenager, he has photos of, I'm assuming, concentration camps because it was very, very disturbing as a teenager finding these photos. And I'm wondering, what books would you recommend, or what books do you gift to other people, especially dealing with grief or sorrow and tragedies, because you've had so many tragedies in your life?
Well, first I recommend my own book, which is Living in Life That Matters, From Nazi Nightmare to American Dream. That's my book. That and I don't remember all of them. Um, I would remember uh, what is his name? Um, the Holocaust survivor who passed away. Um, he
Eli, I don't know if I say his name right.
Eli Wiesel
Weisel?
or
Wiesel, thank you.
Viktor Frankl are the big ones.
Yeah, yeah.
before him. Um, oh, Elie Wiesel.
Hmm.
Is that what you meant? Elie Wiesel.
Yeah.
His book I highly recommend. He has several books. Almost all of them are very important. If
Mm.
you want me, because he went through a lot through the Holocaust. But I'll tell you, out of all the books, I feel that my book is if you want a Holocaust book, that is one of the best because I went through two Holocausts, not just the Polish Holocaust. I ran away from Poland to Hungary, and eventually they came into Hungary, and my second Holocaust began. Very few survivors are around that went through two Holocausts.
Mm.
Very, very unusual. But how that happened, it's so important that you know my story. And I don't know how much time you have to, do you have enough time to listen to my story? It could last over an hour. Um, if not, then just ask questions.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kimberly, and thank you, Benjamin. Next up, Peter, what you got?
Ben, first off, thank you for being here. My question for you is: after both Holocausts, and what was your mental health like, man? I mean, you had all that loss, you had all these crazy things going on, you had to flee Poland just to be re-put back into a camp. Like, how did it affect you mentally? Like, I can't even believe or even begin to understand, man. But it had to be insane.
I ask myself the same question. How did I survive what I went through? I should have been dead at least 18 times. But every time God was there for me and He saved me. Unbelievable stories. Um, you have to hear my story to understand that it was the will of God for me to survive. Maybe He needed a witness, someone who can talk about it. Most of us can't. It hurts too much. But it hurts me too, but someone had to do it. And the fact that I survived all these terrible things shows me that I had to reciprocate. There is a reason why I survived. And the Zachor Holocaust Remembrance Foundation, I feel, is the reason
Mm-hmm.
I, I survived. And I talk to schools and to on Zoom all over the world. I'm very active in Germany, very active. If you ask me those questions, I'll answer. I don't know where to begin unless you have time to listen to my story. Otherwise, just ask questions.
I think his question was geared along like, did you suffer with a lot of depression after or during even? Um, did you hear that?
Uh,
Ben?
the answer is uh, I don't think I'd suffer from depression. I I just I have a wonderful families that I raised, and I'm proud of them. Um, it started just with me. Now we are 18. I thank God for that wonderful family, wonderful
Mm-hmm.
children and grandchildren and great grandchildren. I'm blessed. So what can I tell you?
Thank you, Ben.
Yeah,
Thank you,
I
Peter.
feel there was a reason for my survival.
Mm-hmm.
That reason is the family. Someday it will show itself.
Mm-hmm.
The reason why I survived. And of course, the foundation I started, it's very, very important. You
Mm-hmm.
don't realize how important it is because the world would love to forget about the Holocaust. And
Mm-hmm.
as long as I'm alive, I won't let them. I won't let them forget it. I speak all over and I raise questions. I'm telling you.
Mm-hmm.
Last week I was in San Diego, California, and I spoke, I would say, over 2,000 people there.
Oh wow.
You know, but this isn't unusual for me.
Well, thank you, Ben. Up next, Hillary Russo. What you got for us?
Thank you so much, Ben, for being here and Keegan for holding space for this to happen. This is actually a question that really bounces off what you just said, Ben, quite beautifully, and I've had it in my mind for a very long time. I mean, my background, I'm from Jewish roots. I'm someone that works in trauma informed care, but I'm also with my background in working in journalism. I've heard a lot of stories, both from those who I've worked with, but also from my own family, and I feel very, very fortunate that there are still people like you around to tell these stories. And so thank you for making all these journeys and trips. But my question is, as time goes on and there's less Ben Lessers in the world and there's less Holocaust survivors in the world to tell these stories, how do we make sure that the next generation, what is your thought on how can we make sure the next generation continues to keep telling these stories so that we don't forget them, much like that famous saying, which is if we forget history, we're doomed to repeat it. So what would be your words of wisdom so that we don't forget the Holocaust and the atrocities?
My daughter Gail offered that she will continue after I'm gone to tell my story for as long as she lives. And I believe her children, at least her son, will also be one who will continue. So the Zahor Foundation is going to remain even after I'm gone. I made sure of that. So other than that, it's in the schools. We have to make sure that the schools are teaching about the Holocaust, not just glance over it, but actually teaching what happened. Tell the story so the world shouldn't forget. And all I can tell you is most states are teaching it, but there are some states that don't, and it's important. But even those states that are teaching it, they're just glancing over it. You know, there was a Holocaust, okay, that's not enough. You have to, so that's why my story is so important, so important. Um, because I went through two Holocausts, it's a long story, but it has to be told. It has to be told. And people hear my story, they won't forget it. They will remember.
Thank you
And
so much.
Zachor means remember. This is why the Zachor Foundation I started.
Thank you so much. Uh, it means so much that you are putting so much of your energy in a time of your life where we should be enjoying the fruits of our labor and in our golden years. But you're continuing to do the work and speaking and sharing your story, and to Gail, your daughter, and the family. May there be other families like you that do this, because these stories do need to be told.
Hmm. Thank you, Hillary, and thank you again, Ben. Up next, Crystal Robinson. What you got for us?
Hi, thank you so much, Ben. Your story is empowering, your resilience and how you've turned it into your mission is just I think it moves us all. I think it really moves us all. So thank you for sharing and continuing to have a legacy of sharing through your family.
You're welcome,
The
Crystal.
question that I have kind of came from just listening to you answer and what you were talking. And if you could, you know, give something to those children that maybe don't know about the Holocaust, or maybe they don't get it taught to them in school, what would you give to them so that they would know the story beyond your book?
A Zachor pen. You know, we have given out over 2 million already. I'm trying to give out 6 million to keep this world, 6 million to commemorate every person that died.
Hmm.
Um, Besides that, I don't know what else to give them except tell them the story, tell them what happened to me and to other people.
Your
But,
story is so
but
powerful.
yes, the Zahor pen is so very important. I'm not even wearing now, excuse me. I always wear it, but I change my jacket. It's very
Oh no.
important.
Um. So with that, being said, pictures, videos, stuff like that. Those are powerful tools, right?
Yeah, yeah, of course.
So,
Yeah.
and he's got a ton of pictures and videos and stuff, all with his book. Well, not videos. You can't have videos with the book. But his book is really cool. And if I'm not mistaken, you'll sign a book if they order it from the ZahorFoundation.org, right?
Yeah.
Yep. Alrighty. Um, Gail, were you saying something? Yes. Hmm. Mm. Okay. You are
First.
not being recorded, so no. Um, um, but if it's okay, can we move on to the next question? Okay, thank you. Thank you, Crystal Robinson. We'll be right back to you. So up next we got Tanya Eckenberg. What you got for us?
Hello. Hi, thank you, Ben, so much for being here, and Keegan for putting this together so that we can all experience a little bit of his story live. But Ben, I had you talk about in your book some really good memories early on that you had of your family. What was your favorite? What is your that one memory that you kind of held on to through your journey that helped to help you kind of get through things?
Well, my grandfather in Munkaj had a big orchard. Um, to, Out of his house today, they made two streets, well, one big street with houses built on both sides of the orchard. It's like a block right now. Um, I remember very much how we used to, with my cousins, we would play in the backyard. We would uh, pick pears and grapes and everything. Uh, those are my memories. I don't know if you know where the sukkah is, but those of you who know, they had a sukkah there. Certain things I do remember, but very, very vague,
Yeah.
very vague.
Thank you
Um,
so much for sharing that.
sure.
Thank you, Tanya. Thank you again, Ben. Up next, Jan Lauren Greenfield. What you got for us?
Hi, thank you, Keegan. Thank you, Ben and Gail. Um, First off, if people haven't gone to your website, Ben, it's amazing. And the technology that you use where people can go and like ask you a question where it looks like they're just sitting there and talking to you, it's going to be so beautiful. And it's going to be one of those things where your legacy will just kind of live on forever. So that's really a beautiful, innovative use of technology um, and just like a tool that will be living on forever. So thank you for that.
Yeah,
Um, my question is, I mean, as a storyteller and someone who wants to connect across the generations, I guess you've dedicated your life now to sharing your story. What is this thing that younger generations should take away from like testimonies, um, I guess with the rise of like anti-Semitism and misinformation and this denial that is kind of, you know, yeah, today. What is the lesson? What is it that you want people to speak out against? How can the pain that you've lived through so it just doesn't take root? What is it that you want to the youth to speak up and speak out against?
my AI is very important. That's going to continue for generations to come. You can talk to me and take me home and
Yeah,
ask
so cool.
questions on your phone. Um, Teaching in schools is very important, and we have to emphasize each state in the United States that they should teach it. So we need a little pressure from somebody up high in the government to make that difference, to keep the schools teaching it and teaching it right, not just glancing over it. Um, so as far as that goes, on my website, that will continue for generations. And on my website, We do have a curriculum. So the only curriculum written by a Holocaust survivor. So you can, the, hopefully that will continue for generations to come. So anyone who wants to listen to the story can hear my story on the website. On our website, you can hear everything about the Holocaust. I made sure of that, and this is why we started the foundation, so the world shouldn't forget. Zachor, remember, remember.
Um, and with that, I think he actually started something called Shout It Out, if I'm not mistaken, to
Yes.
where people can, yeah. Do you want to explain on that? I think that that's kind of more along the lines of
We
what
have
she was
on
kind of
our
getting at.
website, on
Yeah,
our
what are
website,
people?
I'm sorry, on our website, we have a program called I Shout Out. And actually, what does I Shout Out mean? You can shout out for peace, for love, instead of hate. You can shout out almost anything you wish. And your shout out will remain on the website for generations to come. In other words, you can shout out and you can also submit the photograph. So this your shout out with your picture will live on for generations to come. Imagine your great grandchildren will be able to see what you shouted out for. It's very, very important. Only one of them in the whole world, Ben Lesser, on my website on Zahor. No one ever has that. So I made sure all these answers are on my website.
Alrighty.
Any other question?
Um, thank you, Ben. Jan, did that answer your question? All right. Thank you very much. So Simba, you are up next. What do you got for us?
Hello, I'm Simba, and first, I just want to say thank you for taking out the time, and thank you for sharing your story. And Keegan, thank you for inviting me to this because I do relate to the comment of schools and curriculums not teaching it, but just like skimping over it because like we never went into detail and the more stuff I know about the Holocaust is just things that I've researched or little books that I've read. And so I've never had this experience where I've got to hear it and like I'm just overwhelmed with like feelings and of course I have so many questions, but I'm definitely gonna get in touch with your website and your book and I'm truly honored to be here right now.
Thank you, sir.
All right. Simba, was that your question?
Yes, yeah, because I think I'm gonna do some research on the website. I'm just
All
full of
right.
questions right now.
I feel you. There's a lot to dive into. So with that being said, everyone has asked at least one question. So we're going to open it up to. It's going to be kind of more of a conversational piece. Um, Jan and Hillary, I believe y'all actually have family ties to the Holocaust as well, correct?
That is correct. Yes.
Um,
Yeah.
so that is really interesting that this kind of fell together this way. I reached out on Facebook for some people that wanted to do a Q&A. I didn't think that I would come across people that actually had relations to the Holocaust as well. So, do y'all have any other questions on top of anything else at the moment?
I would love to continue the conversation if I may. I definitely could ask another question
Okay.
if that's okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure.
Yes, personally, I do, to answer your question, have ties. I mean, being of Jewish descent, but also my stepfather fled from Vienna 6 days prior to and lost his sister, and we lost many family and friends. And I think being able to be in the presence of those who lived through Nazi occupied Europe and survived the Holocaust, being in the camps as well, has given me the ability to hear the stories firsthand, where many, if not most, have not. So the question that always runs through my mind, and I think this is just being in the field of mental health and working in the trauma field specifically, is what point, Ben, was where were you at one point? Were you able to begin the journey talking about it uh, and make it a mission? Because obviously there's a lot of healing that has to take place. And where is it where there was a switch that said, I need this to continue on this conversation?
Okay. Yes, the very beginning, I didn't want my kids to grow up feeling that they are different. I wanted to make sure they go to public school, mingle with all nationalities, and they had all friends from different nationalities. And that went on for years. My kids knew that I was a Holocaust survivor, but I wouldn't tell them the story. It wasn't until my grandson, Adam, Gail's son, in fifth grade, calls me up. He says, Papa, my school teacher found out that you were a Holocaust survivor. She was wondering if we would come down and talk about it, tell us the story. Well, my grandson asked me, and I figured my kids are now grown up, they have children of their own, it's time. So I went in, but I remember going into that fifth grade and my hand was shaking. I couldn't open the door. What am I going to tell the fifth graders? They're going to have nightmares and such. Anyway, they gave me from 10 to 11 to speak. I spoke from 10 to 11, from 11 to 12. School bell rang, and the kids were glued to their chairs. None of them budged. The teacher had to chase them out. And when they're outside the hall, instead of going to eat lunch, they surrounded me and just wanted to touch me and ask me questions. That's when I realized, Ben, it's time. You can't be silent. You have to talk. And that's when I started to talk. And that's when at that point, I moved to Las Vegas and I wrote a book. And then I started the Zachor Holocaust Remembrance Foundation to keep this world from acquiring amnesia.
Oh wow. Uh, Thank you, Ben.
Here I am, I'm still talking.
Thank you for that. Acquiring amnesia hit hard. I don't think I've heard it explained that way.
Mm-hmm.
So thank you.
Sure.
Uh, Jan.
Yeah, so I'm what's like called like a third generation Holocaust survivor, meaning my grandparents, my parents, and me. So, Simba, when you said it was like you really haven't heard firsthand testimony, it was very, I don't know, that hit me really hard because I've just sort of grown up with these stories. Like it's just so literally in my DNA, and it's just so different than my experience. I kind of take it for granted knowing these stories. My mom was born in a DP camp in Berlin, so a displaced persons camp. So after the Holocaust, after liberation, her my grandparents met up in Germany after the war. They were trying to make their lives again, figure out where to go, and my mom was born there, and then they emigrated to the States. So, and then I grew up with like my grandfather not wanting to show his arm because of like the numbered tattoo. You know, like he didn't want to wear short
Yeah,
sleeves
yeah.
because, you know, which is like a very common thing. And it was interesting hearing you talk about God, Ben. Like, I really want to hear more about that because I feel like uh, it split a lot of Jewish like people. Like, they either they kind of lost their faith or they went stronger into their faith, right? There's this joke, I'm gonna butcher it, but it's like this Holocaust survivor gets to heaven and God's like, tell me a joke. And he tells him a Holocaust joke. And God's like, oh, that's not funny. And he goes, oh, I guess you had to be there to God. Um, yeah, it's a great joke. And so I'm just curious about if you could speak a little bit more about your faith and how you knew God was with you. And because I think a lot of Jewish people sort of maybe who went through the Holocaust like they lost their religion maybe, or were angry at God. So maybe just I'd really be curious to hear about that and your experience.
All right, Jim. Um,
If you don't mind, if you don't mind. Yeah.
when I was in Auschwitz,
Yeah.
and my eyes saw them throwing children alive into fiery pits, alive, day and night without a stop. I said to myself, where is God? How can God watch this? And I grew up in a religious house, and I believed strongly in a God. But when I saw this, I lost my faith. But you know, after the war, I kept talking to myself, how is it possible that we have a God and he allowed this to happen? So it dawned on me that God was probably weeping during the Holocaust. You see, he gave us all free will. That means this is something he left for us human beings. If we humans decide to kill instead of love, he can't interfere because free will. This is something he gave us. It's very important. So I started to believe in God again. And my answer is he gave us free will. And whatever we humans do, he can't interfere. So I'm a believer again. I believe in God.
Thank you very much, Ben,
Thank you.
and thank you, Jan, for that. Let's go ahead and get it back in that circle fashion if we can. Looks like Simba and Kimberly are off camera at the moment. Um, so, uh, Peter, you got any other questions off the top of your head for Benjamin?
Ben, I had a question for you. After everything you experienced, how did you learn to trust people again? I mean, with the Germans
Ooh.
invading Poland and you having to flee, and then being put back in a camp in what was a free country at the time, and then then you went back into camp. So my thing is, how was it hard to trust people afterwards? Like, did you start to really just think that maybe? How did you know these people weren't going to send you back over there once you got out of the camps and type things like that?
No, I trusted people. Um, I knew I didn't trust the perpetrators of the Holocaust, obviously the Nazis,
Yeah.
but you know, I have friends, a lot of German friends. And one of my friends was hit. It was Rudolf Höss, his grandson. Rudolf Höss was the commandant of Auschwitz. He was the biggest killer. Over 1 million people he killed. But his grandson and I became friends. It's not his fault. And I have a lot of German friends. In fact, I'm so involved with Germany that I received the what do you call that, Gail? The Order of
The
Merit
Order of
of the
Merit.
German Chancellor. Why did he give it to me? For the Zachor Holocaust Remembrance Foundation. It's so unusual, strange. Of all places, Germany, to give me the highest award they can give any civilian for teaching not to forget the Holocaust.
Oh
Yeah.
wow.
That's awesome. Thank you so much, Ben. And by the way, I'm German and Polish, so I kind of like relate to a lot of your stories about both sides of it. It's kind of weird when you hear it that when I tell people that sometimes they look at me kind of weird because like from what I knew about the Holocaust, I had to really dig in my past to see a little bit about it, and I have to say it's truly inspiring the fact that you're talking about these things with people, even kids of 5 years old. I don't think people realize that they know and understand a lot more than we all realize they do. But thank you so much, Ben. I really appreciate you being here.
Okay, Peter.
Awesome. Thank you, Ben. Thank you, Peter. And let's see. Crystal Robinson, you're up next. What you got for us this time?
I I just wanted to let Ben know that I kind of noticed that I always look to see what people's superpowers are. And just from this conversation, I think yours is love.
Yes, it is. It is. Um, Hitler and the Nazis did not start with killing. It all started with hate. Hate, propaganda. This is how it began. So the hatred has to stop. Why hate? Love and hate are both contagious. Choose love. This is what I'm teaching the world. Stop the hatred. There is no place for hate in this world. And why hate? So the hatred has to stop. I hope I answered it.
You did. I think that's a beautiful. It shows in your spirit when you talk to people, and how resilient and empowered you are in putting forth your love, and how important that is. So thank you very much for that.
Yes, thank you.
Awesome. Thank you again, Ben, and thank you again, Crystal. Tanya, you're up next. What you got for us?
Thank you. So, I'm all about memories and uh, moving forward with what we can. How did your experience kind of shape how you raised your kids? How did it affect how you raised your kids?
It affected me. All right, I love my children, and I had, I drove for UPS, United Parcel Service, for 25 years, and we had, I think near the end, I had 4 weeks vacation. Every year I would take the kids and we would go out camping. We would fish and we would really enjoy life together. I always involved everything with my children, and to me, they're very, very special. I love them very much.
Awesome. Did that answer your question, Tanya? Okay. Thank you, Ben. Kimberly, you're back on screen. So this is coming back around, and I saw that you rejoined the studio. So, what do you got for Ben on your question for him?
Yeah, thank you. I was having some tech issues. So, can you hear me okay?
Kimberly, I
Yes, we
hear
can.
you.
Okay. I shared a little bit before about learning that my grandfather had served in World War II and he delivered ammunition during the Holocaust.
Yeah.
And what I ended up learning, once I discovered the photos, my mom had them stashed away. So nobody knew about them. I'm the youngest and I'm the most curious. So I discovered the photos because they're alcoholics. They left me home alone, so I found them. Now, my mom was super angry with me that I found them and that I was asking about them. So, my interpretation of that was the shame. We're German and Irish, but her side of the family is German. So, he had to go over, serve for the United States, being German, and experiencing this horrific experience. He went to Hitler's home. Like I said, he went to some kind of camp because I found photos of just bodies on the ground piled on top of each other. It makes me so emotional now thinking about it. I don't have the Jewish heritage, but it's heartbreaking as a human that this happened not too many years ago. But that shame. So, can you just talk a little bit about forgiveness? What was your journey of forgiving?
I'm not forgiving. I'm not forgiving the perpetrators of the Holocaust. How can you forgive them? None of them are probably alive anymore, but I'll never forgive the perpetrators. But I don't hold a resentment to their children or grandchildren. It's not their fault, but the perpetrators of the Holocaust I will never forgive. They killed my family. 6 million people they killed. How can you forgive them?
Thank you.
Thank you, Kimberly. Um, Jan, I saw that you have to go soon. You got any last words or anything for Ben? Oh, no, that was for Jan.
Um, I used to work at the Jewish Partisan Educational Foundation, Ben. So we taught about the partisans, the resistance fighters during the Holocaust. So I just wanted to mention them too, that they're the resistance, because that is just a little bit of a lesser known story too. Some of the resistance during the Holocaust. I just wanted to bring awareness to that. Oftentimes it was, you were too young to be a resistance fighter at 10 years old during the Holocaust. Um, but I just wanted to mention the partisan story too, because that's not a very well known story. But maybe you came across it, or, when you were in the camps, or you heard about the partisans. If you could just speak a little bit about the partisans, if you had any experience.
I know very little other than what I read in books. I knew there were Parkinson's, but uh, I was too young. I where I was in the camps and running and hiding. I was too young to be involved, but I knew there were partisans, but not in the area where I was.
No.
Most of them were near the Russian border, near where Germany infiltrated Russia, part of Russia. That's where the partisans started. And right, they lived in the forest, most of them hiding. And whenever they could, they did whatever they could to kill the Germans and stop the killing. But I didn't, I knew about it, but I didn't know too much because I wasn't anywhere near the partisan borders.
That's right. Yeah, the resistance and just hearing the stories too of like the different forms of resistance in camp, whether it was hiding an extra piece of bread or celebrating Shabbat or, you know, looking a guard in the eye. You know, there was all different forms of
The,
blowing up the trains, like you said, like the partisans were doing. Like there's different forms of resistance. I'm sure that you know,
yes,
like,
I heard it. I heard them. They were singing songs. Some of the religious people were singing songs in Hebrew, and they knew that they could die any minute because life wasn't, you know, life and death, it could happen within any minute. If a Nazi looked at you and he didn't like what he saw, he killed you. No one could stop them, and they could do it. They did it because they could. That's all. No one, what can I tell you? So I knew very little about the partisans.
well, like Crystal said, your superpower is love. And it was like so beautiful to meet you and just be blessed for a moment by your love. I'm sorry, I did have a hard stop at 3, so I have to get going. I'm so sorry to jump
Okay,
off. But thank you so much, Keegan. It was so
it's
nice to
okay.
meet all of you. Thank you for
Thank
this.
you, Miss
Of course.
Greenfield.
So nice.
Thank you, Jan, for being on.
Bye. Thank you all.
Of course. Um, and with that, Hillary, it is back to you. Did you have
Yeah,
another question?
I do. And I know that many are leaving and we're wrapping things up. So, Ben, I just want to say thank you again. Gail, thank you for helping put this together. Of course, Keegan, this was a wonderful space to create. But not to get political, um, how do we, in the political climate we live in, where there is a lot of comparison to a repeat performance or hatred and just really negative fear mongering and an unwelcoming and unpleasant space, how can we, as a collective, and I imagine most of us here on this panel are in the States, but there might be many listening from other areas, and we really are a collective, meaning the people in this world. How can we, as somebody who has been through the atrocities, truly make a difference and come from that place of love, come from that place of, well, I'm just going to leave it with that, come from that place of love and do our best as each individual person here to do so.
Well, you answered your own question.
I believe I did.
You love instead of
Yeah.
hate.
Yeah.
The hatred of any sort should stop.
Mm,
Love and hate are contagious, so choose love.
that's right.
And there's no reason to hate. And, you know, hatred is so many different ways of hate.
Mm.
You know,
Well, I think that's part of it as well. What I think the clarity of my question more is so that love is so pure, but hate comes from a place of fear. And overcoming fear when people are continuously given information and dialogue that could lead to fear, how does one, we can't change anyone else. That's not our job. So where can we go with that feeling? If we see people that are experiencing the fear, it's not so much changing them. How would you embrace somebody like that?
all I can tell you, while individuals can't always choose what happens to them, but whether it's a crisis or a calamity, people can choose to either let it turn their lives or learn from it and move forward. It's essential to understand the reasons and the consequences of personal choices. It's possible to let tragedy or trauma become a reason to stop living. But it's also possible to live through extreme circumstances and commit to a life that has meaning, a life that matters.
Yeah, it's choice. Thank you.
Choice.
Thank you so much.
Hmm. Thank you, Hillary, and thank you, Benjamin, again. I'm sorry that I keep going back and forth on Ben and Benjamin, and I'm sorry for everyone if I've butchered your names and the intros and everything. But with that being said, who's got questions ready to go? Uh, Ben, I know that. Oh, Kimberly, you got a question ready to go? I saw your hand up.
I'm curious, have you revisited Europe? Have you revisited any of the camps you were in?
You want to know which camps I was in?
Have
I,
you been back to any of the camps to visit them?
yes, yes. I
And
was in
what was that experience
Auschwitz and I
like?
was in Dachau. Oh, yes.
And
But
have you returned?
I did return, yes.
And
With,
what was that experience like?
with my family. It wasn't not an easy experience,
Mm,
but they wanted to know and they wanted to see it.
mm,
So I went back to Auschwitz. I went back to Dachau with my kids and
mm,
my wife. We witnessed all of that. We went through it, yes.
mm.
Uh,
Thank you.
Thank you, Kimberly. And for everyone, we are past the hour mark, so we didn't have a set time limit on this. But at the same time, I'm not trying to sit here and hold people. So if anyone needs to go, they're free to go. And if Ben, are you free going for a little bit? Does anyone else have any more questions, or do we want to wrap up?
I'm free, yes.
You're free. Crystal, you got your hand up.
I do. I have a question for Ben. Um, I've found this in my own life and hearing other stories, and of course, your story is unimaginable. That when people deal with traumas or calamities, as you so elegantly put, that it changes their makeup and they either dig into the love to go forward in purpose. And I find that, or they just retreat into themselves. So, what was it that gave you purpose when you came out?
My grandson asking me to speak in the fifth grade.
Mm,
And after I saw what these kids are like and how much they wanted to know everything, that gave me a purpose. It gave me a purpose to keep speaking in schools, which I did. I spoke to thousands and thousands of schools all over the world, all over the world. And the 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 end result was that I started this whole Holocaust Remembrance Foundation, a
mm,
foundation to keep the world from acquiring amnesia about the Holocaust. So we're doing everything we can to stop that, stop forgetting, and stop the hatred.
it's commendable that you have this purpose, and I think we all appreciate it. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Crystal. Thank you very much. Does anyone else have any questions that they have off the top of their head ready to go? Pete, what you got? Nope, you're muted. Yep.
Okay, there we go. Sorry. Ben,
Awesome.
my question for you, I know you said that God is the reason that you made it through the camps. Do you think maybe it was your siblings that were also looking out for you at the same time? You know, the ones that you lost that were pushing you and your sister so that you could tell their stories?
Um, Only one sister of mine survived besides me, and she was doing the same things that I was, but she passed about 6 years ago.
I'm sorry to hear that.
Yeah, she was doing the same thing, um, and I'm continuing.
Yeah, my question though is, do you think that your siblings that you lost during the time were do you think they were protecting you so you could tell their story? Not just God, but they were also on your side to push you through so you could share their story so people could remember the Holocaust?
I hope so. I'm don't know the answer if, if they did or not, but um, whether they did or didn't do it, I'm doing it.
Yeah,
I'm doing it, and that's the most important thing.
it is. And thank you so much, Ben. I appreciate you being here. Once again, Keegan, thank you so much for letting me be here too.
Yeah,
Of course.
I'm doing
Thank.
it, and my kids are gonna continue to do it.
Yep. Thank you very much, Pete, for that. Uh, and I guess we're going back around in a circle at this point. So Hillary, are you got a question ready to go?
Oh, goodness, I have so many questions. um, I think, I was just thinking about this because you were just answering so many wonderful questions, and I'm sure many of them you've heard before and have been asked before. But I'm curious, is there one question that you've never been asked that you would like to answer? Is there something you were like, nobody ever asks me that you would like the platform to share?
I think that every question that I can think of were asked. I can't imagine something that they didn't ask. Um, I speak to so many children and adults. They every asked question that anyone could possibly think of were asked of me. Believe me. I,
So, if I may, can I ask a follow-up question to that?
yes.
Keegan, that's okay?
Yeah.
Um, with that being said, and knowing that you've covered all territory and have been asked all the questions you've been asked in the years that you've been doing this, and if this was the last conversation you were to have in this on this platform or to speak at a school, or if this was the last opportunity, would you feel at peace and full of love and know that all is well and you've have done all that you can?
Again, I would say stop the hatred. Choose love. And I even have a song that came out by the name of Choose Love. Beautiful song. Um, Maybe my daughter Gail will tell you about it lately. I have several songs, but Choose Love, and the only thing I can think of, if the last thing I could say is uh, choose love. And listen, I hope to live for a long time. I'm not I'm not at the end yet. I'm sure that God feels the same way, and He'll keep me going for a while. You know, out of the family of seven, only two of us survived. My sister Lola and I. How I found my sister Lola, not knowing either one of us, neither one of us knew that the other survived, was a miracle in itself. I was in one room with my sister Lola for 2 hours, about 2 feet apart, and neither one of us knew that the other survived. And I left. I was going to Palestine at that time, and and then I found out that my sister is alive and she's dying in the hospital. Her dying wish is to see her brother. So I left before boarding ship in Marseille. I left my group and I came to see my sister in the same room where I was there uh, 2 weeks earlier. Anyway, it's a very interesting story. Very interesting how we found each other. And she wasn't dying. She just said that she was dying to keep me to come back to her. But she was in her ninth month pregnant and she was expecting a child any day. And it's a very interesting story. It's all in my book.
Thank you.
Thank you, Hillary. Thank you, Ben. Circling back around, looks like we get up back to, is it Crystal or Tinya? It's, both have your hands up.
I think
Just
it's me. I
okay.
actually have to run, but I wanted to thank Ben so much for coming on. I'm about halfway through your book, and it is such an impactful story, and I found myself tearing up so many times. But thank you so much for writing it and telling us your story and sharing your time with us today.
Thank you, Tanya. Uh,
Thank you, Tinya. Um, And thank you for being on the show. Thank you for the questions. I look forward to speaking with you after all this again for another energy session. So thank you. Bye bye. Oh no, and I froze, and everything's back to normal. There we go. Crystal, so that comes back to you. Did you have another question ready to go?
I didn't really have another question that came to me. Um, I can't wait to read your book.
Yeah.
I want to hear the rest of the story.
All right.
All right. um, does Hillary? I know you had plenty of questions. Peter, do you got some? Kimberly, does anyone else have any other questions that they got off the top of their head that they got uh, itching?
I just wanted to say the same thing, Ben. I can't wait to read the book, man. It just sounds like it's gonna be something great. I'm absolutely thrilled. I cannot wait to order it, and and the fact that you're gonna sign it would be a fantastic thing too. I'd love to add it to my archive for my show. I am working on something for the background for my future studio where I have other authors, and I'd like to invite you to be on the show too. If you ever want to come tell your story, I'd love to have you come. I think it'd be great for people to hear it. So that's all I've got.
Okay.
All right.
Um, if I may, I just want to come off of what Peter just said. I was thinking the same thing, with it's so wonderful when we have a community of podcasters because we really are a very special group of people coming from the broadcasting world with over 30 years doing television broadcasting. I just think podcasting is so different. It's much more intimate, it's much more personal. And I think we help each other out, which is beautiful. So thank you for this,
Mhm.
Keegan. But more importantly, I would love to have you come on Holistically Speaking, where trauma to triumph stories through health, healing, and humor, how to be a happy, healthy grown up. That's really the whole mission of our show. And it would be an honor to have you tell your story because we all have different audiences. And if we can share our audiences, then we are sharing the love and choosing love. So thank you. And thank you, Gail, too, for helping to make this possible.
Yeah. Thank you, Hiller. Um, well, it's so important that we teach love. We should teach love and acceptance to our children. The hatred has to stop. I don't know. For future generations, we have to teach them how to be kind, acceptance, and tolerant. We have to be able to tolerate other people. That's missing in today's society. Everyone is for themselves, and they just don't care about love. So much hatred is going on in this world. We have to stop it. Choose Love is a beautiful, beautiful song.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Ben. Um, and thank you, Hillary, on that one. I guess we're going around on closing it out. So, Crystal, did you have final questions or anything? Final comments?
Just my final question, I think, was answered in the chat. I was looking for the website, and I would like to just ask you to like put that out there, how people can find your book, find this AI platform, find the course, find the information, just because I think it's super valuable. Thank you.
Great. I think I'll ask my daughter Gail to give you all this information. Um, it's the Zachor Holocaust Remembrance Foundation. It's all on my website.
Hey,
zachorfoundation.org.
I'm back.
You get on my website and you're going to find all the answers. Everything you're looking for is there. I made sure of it. I started with the AI before anyone even knew there was such a thing as AI because I wanted students to be able to talk to me when I'm not around. Imagine you can take me on your phone and take me home with you and ask me questions. How important that is. And I'll answer them.
Thank you, Ben. Thank you, Crystal, for that. And then Kimberly, what questions do you got left?
Hopefully you can hear me. The dog is not happy, so I don't know if the dog is going to go into another barking fit. So if he does, I apologize. I want to thank both of you too for having me today. And Ben, thank you for being here with us and being so authentic and transparent and vulnerable, especially for what you've gone through. You've made my dream come true because I've met some Holocaust survivors and never have had the chance to hear it from their own personal story because of their hurt and the sadness and how hard it is to talk about it. And I have my own, like I said, connection to my family having had this shame that they were carrying in through decades. So I appreciate you and I'm grateful for you. And I'm curious, as you are today, who you are today, which you are a beautiful soul, and I appreciate you, what would you say to that 10-year-old boy that when this all started?
Yeah, what would I say to him?
Yeah, what would you say to your 10-year-old self?
Because it was, we want a 10-year-old today or 10-year-old then. I mean, and I don't know the answer to it. I would
Okay.
probably say choose love, choose love, stop the hatred.
Thank you for that.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Kimberly. Uh, with that being said, it looks like everyone is pretty much out of questions, or maybe not out of questions, but letting everything kind of process and thinking of more questions for later. But everyone, we can zahorfoundation.org. We can find his book there, his handy dandy little AI to take home with you. We also just got to say thank you to everyone that's been on. So we've got Peter, Benjamin himself, Hillary Russo, Crystal Robinson, and Kimberly Henry. And then everyone that is watching, y'all can't see her, y'all can't hear her, but we've got Gail actually in the background. She's over at Benjamin's resident, but on a totally different recording link and everything. So she's just helping us kind of run the show. Um, but with that being said, it looks like we're at the end of the Q&A panel for Ben Lesser. So be sure to check out his actual recording at retrievingsanity.com or Retrieving Sanity on Spotify, YouTube, any of those spots. And his story is Surviving the Unimaginable with Ben Lesser. So be sure to check that out if you want to get his story. And then also, he's going to be on Pete versus Anxiety. And I think basically everyone else's that's here because everyone else here has podcasts for the most part. So for that, I just want to say thank you everyone for tuning in. Thank you, uh, just everyone for this. This was awesome, and I can't believe that we were able to get this because I've always wanted to speak with just a person from the Holocaust and to chair a Q&A panel. I hope I did decent, and that's as so long as I set the bar low, I okay, right? But with that being said, I just wish everyone the best rest
Gail,
of Sunday. Uh, Ben,
Gail, you want to say a few words? No?
he's not. No one besides us can hear her. Gail, if you want to step into his room real quick, you could. If you don't, that's okay too.
I don't think she hears.
Well, the thing, she can hear us. We kind of can't hear her. It kind of sort of funny how it works.
Okay.
Uh, yes, you're talking to us, but not the audience. Mm-hmm. Sorry about that. But next time we'll have you in as a guest as well. So that way you can help facilitate it a little bit better. But is there anything anyone wants to end with? All right. Much love, everyone.
All right.
All
Thank you.
right.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Ben. And be sure, again, everyone, check out zahorfoundation.org, please. It'll definitely change the world little by little. Ripple effects. You never know what your impact is going to do. So, with that being said, we're going to go ahead and hit stop here. And, all right. Yep. Mm-hmm. So whenever we actually post the recording itself, I'll go ahead and include the link to his original interview. So that way, if someone wants to, they can click on that, listen to it, and then come back to the Q&A. So